Alright guys, so welcome to my madness. Yes, I've got the Gargoyles Thailog figure, and let me explain here. I put off getting any of these Gargoyles figures for a long time for one very simple reason. I just didn't want to get into another line to collect. I already collect too much, okay? And I'm a huge fan of the show from the 90s. I think it was one of the best, bordering on the best, certainly top 5 cartoons from the 90s, hands down. Loved the show, think the show holds up, everything. And every time I would see these figures, they just looked amazing. But I resisted the urge to pick them up because I just don't want to get into another collection. And then I found myself collecting other NECA figures. You know, the Defenders of the Earth and stuff like that. And just being constantly impressed every time I get a new figure. And so I broke down and I got this one. So I picked him up and here we have it. So this is the figure. Big, huge box. Barely fits on screen here. And there is Thailog in all his glory. Of course, he's just a redo of Goliath. I know this. I think he comes with some different accessories and stuff, but just a redo of Goliath. But there we have him. So this is the box. Great artwork there on the front, by the way. Got a picture of the figure on the side, more pictures on the back. I mean, this is just great presentation. Really looks nice. So let's go ahead, crack this guy open, and see what we got inside. All right, so we got him out of the package here, and he barely fits in my photo booth. His wings are touching the sides of the booth, but we'll get into more on that here in just a minute. Let's look at the accessories we've got here. We do get a couple of fisted hands for him. Then we get an open hand or a gripping hand there. And that is so that he can hold his little gun that he comes with. So he's got that. Then he comes with an effect for the gun, which is huge. And really, I mean, very nicely done. Nicely, you know, painted. It's got some different colors and things on there. I will, however, say, in addition to look how big this thing is, it feels like very brittle plastic, and I am just gonna pack this away somewhere because I feel like if this thing just falls off a shelf, it's going to break. Like some of these little spikes are going to break off, or this piece right here is going to break. This is very brittle plastic. So, you know, and it's honestly a little too big to use in a display in my opinion. So, kind of unnecessary, and I'm not even going to use it. Then, of course, last, he does come with a little briefcase here, which you can open up and you see we've got cash and keys inside. So we've got that. Pretty cool little briefcase. All right, so as far as the figure goes, I can't really move him around too much because of the wings, and we'll take care of that here in just a second. But you can see the wingspan on this guy, just as far as how far he goes out. He goes out total almost to, well, about 1.75 feet is about his total wingspan on this. And of course, if we turn him around here, the wings actually look beautiful. They're very well painted. And of course, they do have, so we can get him in here properly, they do rotate and they do open up like that, and you can hear that snapping. That's actually the ratchets in the peg there. So it snaps that far, snaps back a peg, or whatever you want to do. These do not feel like as brittle a plastic as that other piece, but they certainly don't feel like they are very flexible at all. So I would be careful with the wings, and I personally will be careful with these wings as far as trying not to drop them or anything, because they are a much harder, brittler plastic than the rest of the figure's made out of, although not nearly as brittle as this stuff right here. So we got the wings there. What we're going to do for the sake of this review is take these wings off, because there's no way that I can maneuver this guy around and show you with these wings on here. But like I said, the wings look really nice. They've got a nice, you know, blue, kind of a metallic blue color to them with the black shading and everything on there. They're really nicely done. They're beautiful wings. And when I put them on display, obviously he's going to have the wings on. But for now, we're going to put these over to the side, take a look at the figure itself, And the figure looks gorgeous. I love the paintwork on this thing. The sculpt is well done. And again, this is all reuse from Goliath, but it looks fantastic. Even the face sculpt there looks great. The red eyes, I love the blue tone to the skin with all the shading on everything. Looks great. Love the fact that we get a bendy tail. Oh, that's nice. I miss the bendy tails from back in the day, you know, where you can do different stuff with them. That's pretty cool. So, and it does have a little bit of articulation on the tail where you can move it up and down, or you can turn it and spin it. So not a lot of articulation there, but made up for by the fact that you have a bendy tail, which, especially when he has his wings on, you're going to need, because that gives him this kind of tripod design where he's going to be able to stand up with the weight of these wings on his back, which he does need that. But sculpt and paint look amazing on this guy, look amazing on the wings, look amazing on the accessories. Little brittle plastic on a couple pieces, which is something you definitely want to be careful for. Other than that, articulation is good. We've got single jointed knees, okay, double jointed elbows, which work really well, come up pretty good. He's got the, you know, the bicep swivels and everything and all that good stuff. He's got standard articulation in the shoulders. The head doesn't move a lot. It is on a ball joint, but because of his hair, he can't really look up any higher than this. But that's just the design of the character. It is character accurate, but for articulation, a little lacking there. He does have the diaphragm joint there at the top, which gives him a little bit of movement, so he can spin around and do stuff like that. With the single jointed knees, they only come up to about right there. And then, of course, he's got the ankles where he's got the rocker and he's got some pivot and all that kind of stuff. And then he does have toe articulation in here, where you can actually bend the toes up just a little bit, depending on what position you want to put him into. So basic articulation, nothing fantastic, nothing great, but certainly, you know, pretty much everything you would need. And my theory is the reason he has single jointed knees is because it does give him better stability, and he has the tail, which adds to being able to make sure he stands up, and with the weight of the wings and everything else like that, maybe double jointed knees would have been a little less stable for him. He's already a hefty figure here, and so you know, I don't know, it doesn't bother me because of the fact that essentially with the design of the figure being a gargoyle, you essentially have two single jointed knees here. This is basically what you've got. So he still does a lot in the way of articulation as far as that kind of stuff goes. So all in all, you know, he looks pretty good, and I'm digging it, and I think they did a really good job. Again, paint, sculpt, everything's on point. Articulation is good enough, but not great. Everything looks really, really good. So we need to go ahead and throw this guy up with some other figures and see how he stacks up. So of course we're going to compare him to some other NECA figures that I've picked up recently that I've been very, very happy with. Of course, we got Lothar and the Phantom, both from the Defenders of the Earth line, and I've kind of stood Thailog up. Thailog, can't remember how you pronounce his name. Stood him up a little bit more so you can see just how tall he can get when he's standing. He's well over 8 inches tall total. And these two figures are already about 7.5 inches each, so he kind of towers over them just a little bit. So he's a big, chunky figure. I mean, this is a lot of plastic here. So, but I mean, he's supposed to be a big gargoyle dude. So I think as far as scale goes, he fits in perfectly. Alright, so for some 6-inch scale comparisons here, we got a couple of Kit Bash's Marvel Legends that I've got. On the left, we've got my version of Evil Reed Richards, and on the right, we've got Tony Stark kind of done up in half of his hologram armor. And this just kind of gives you a good sense of scale of how Goliath fits in, or excuse me, Thailog fits in with a 6-inch scale. And I think he still works, because he is supposed to be considerably bigger than a human being. So even in a 6-inch scale collection, I think this looks pretty good. Alright, so let's talk price real quick. This guy's going for usually between 34 and 38 bucks. Depends on where you get him, and if you have to get him online, you might have to pay some shipping, something like that. I actually did pick him up for $34.99 with free shipping, so 35 bucks. is it worth? I say yes. Look, he has issues in articulation just because of the design of the character itself, and there are a couple of brittle pieces that you do definitely want to be careful of, and he's huge, which makes fitting him into a display potentially difficult. All in all though, man, the sculpt and paint is fantastic on this guy. He's got more than enough articulation for whatever you really need to do with this character. I think it's fantastic. I mean, look, you're not getting this level of sculpt and paint with Marvel Legends or McFarlane or anything like that. So even though you're paying on average about $10 more for this guy than you would for one of those, I think you're more than getting your money's worth in something like this. So yeah, he's a niche item, I think, just because of some issues that he might have, but ultimately I do definitely think it's worth the $35 or so. Absolutely, hands down. Look, I'm glad I have him. My only concern at this point is where I'm going to put him, because I don't know where he's going to fit right now on any of my displays, so that's a problem I'm going to have to work out. But honestly, I'm more than happy to do so, because I really do think this is a very well done figure. So there you go, guys. I appreciate you watching as always, and we will talk to you later.